Welcome to Generation 19. The podcast today is about true discipleship. I'm your host, Pastor Philip, and today I'm joined with my lovely wife, Miss Darlena, and we want to talk about true discipleship. This is a word that you hear a lot today. Discipleship. Well, what is it? What does it really mean to be a disciple? And so what I want to do is I want to help people understand this, because there are some things floating around that concern me. Like, I'm a disciple because I go to church. Or I'm a disciple because I read my Bible.
It's so important to unpack these words that have been in the church for so long, because they've been so watered down to the point they don't even have the same meaning of the original intent.
Well, right. And so what we want to do is we want to understand what is true discipleship. Let's start there as we unpack this. And so in my mind, as I'm looking at this, a true disciple is not just somebody who agrees with Jesus, or somebody who reads the Bible, or somebody who even knows that Jesus is the Messiah, because the devil knows that Jesus is the Messiah. But a disciple is somebody who reorders their entire life to become like Jesus.
Yeah.
That's really important, right?
He gives up something to follow him.
Yeah. Jesus didn't say, hey, come listen to me once a week on Sunday mornings, and then you go live however you want to, right?
No, he was calling them to be transformed.
Yeah, I mean, these young men, his original disciples, the disciples were older teenagers. They weren't grown men with white beards like we see in some of our old movies and stuff.
No.
These were young guys who were on the search for the Messiah, and when he called them, they literally dropped their professions, their careers, their opportunities.
Left their families, wives, and to follow him every day.
Yeah.
Not come listen to a sermon once a week.
One of the things that I like, and I heard this, it is that when you are a disciple, you are so close to your rabbi, to your teacher, that as the dust comes off of him in his path of walking, you are in line to catch that dust coming off of his person. And so this is a close, intimate following, seeking to become, making sure that my priorities line up with his priorities, and I am on the move to fulfill the calling and purpose that he has assigned to my life, and I'm becoming like him because...
That's so good. That's definitely not our morning quiet time.
No, right. I'm just going to sort of, what I think sometimes we do is we have boxes. My life is, this is my spiritual life, this is my public life, this is my private life, this is my time on the couch life, and, all these different boxes that we live out of. But really, when you were doing life with Jesus, it was all
was all intermingled. There were no boxes.
Yeah. So you have been using this term that I think is very significant. And as we look at the model of Jesus, this term, this word that you're using is a great place for us to help people to differentiate between what is sort of a modern version of discipleship and more of what Jesus actually did with his disciples. What is that term that you use all the time?
Evocative.
Right. What does evocative mean?
Jesus used an evocative approach, which the word evoke means to pull something out of you, like, to extract gold out, as an example. And where the church model is more directive. So the difference in directive and evocative is you tell people what to do. Our education system is directive. Our church model is directive. Our workplaces are directive. People just get told what to do and just walk a chalk line, just shut up and march. Where evocative is Jesus drew things out of people. You can even see that from his teaching. So if you just take like the Sermon on the Mount, for instance, he taught in parables. It wasn't a directive where he says, do this, don't do that. He taught people, so he evoked their mind to think and imagine and like call them into vision, so to speak. And so in that sense, he's calling us to live from a place of vision, to live from a place of hearing his voice. So he's calling us to live in a way that utilizes all of our spiritual gifts. As we are to hear, sense, see, and feel him. That's an evocative. And he pulls our calling out of us because our calling is not something that we find. It's something that's already in us. It's something that we get in touch with. And that's what evocative is.
So I like that. I like the word evocative. I believe it definitely is the style and the way that Jesus, he was constantly asking questions. And even when he did preach directly, and not tell stories, he was trying to get people to hear things and be receptive to things.
It's provoking them to action.
Right. And so one of the things that Jesus clearly did with people is that he never left them neutral. He called you to be either a yes or a no. Like, the rich young ruler comes to him and says, hey, I've done all these things. I've got all this, I'm following this law. I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And he looks at him and he says, hey, well, the last thing you got to do is sell everything you got and follow me.
Well, we know what the Bible says about being lukewarm.
Yeah.
That would be neutral. I will spew you out of my mouth.
Yeah.
So we're not called to be neutral or lukewarm.
Well, right. And so the rich young ruler, back to that, is, he doesn't know what to do with that. Right? And so what we see with Jesus is that he did not leave people neutral. Even his own disciples, when they complained about him running off the massive crowds because he talked about eating his flesh and drinking his blood, Peter said, hey, where are we going to go? And Jesus didn't back out one bit. He didn't go, well, I'm sorry, guys. I shouldn't have been that hardcore. I shouldn't have been so graphic today in my sermon. But nevertheless, it's like, hey, you guys are going to hang or no?
No, he didn't apologize for being confrontive.
Not at all. Not at all. And so when we look at this evocative, provocative model, we see that Jesus never left people neutral. And so when we also look at it, he was very relational. It was life on life. He spent time with them. He listened to them. He went to their houses,
Yeah, he was definitely not transactional.
Right.
Which is what a lot, again, is a lot of our church model. And workplace models and education model are transactional. You do this, I give you this. I tell you this, you leave me alone.
Yeah. Well, and his classroom was on the move. It wasn't just a sit and listen classroom where he sat down with them once a week and taught them and never had any interaction with them anymore. And one of the things I find in this place of discipleship where we're saying that we're discipling people, oftentimes we've just created classrooms and one person does all the talking.
Yeah.
And that's a monologue, not a dialogue. Jesus was engaged in dialogues. Do we need teaching? Yes. It's a part of the equipping process. But I think that what's as significant as and important is that we are allowed to get to know our mentors and our disciplers and the people who are leading us, pastors, teachers, prophets. We all need to be accessible. Now, we can't disciple the masses. And that's one of the challenges
Yes.
is that we're so crowd driven and numbers driven. We want to be able to bring in the crowds and move the masses, but literally we got to pick out the disciples. We got to know that year to year we got to spend time with people,
Yes.
raising them up in a relational way.
So we're to exhort them into action, because that's what the word exhort means. Mm-hmm. And that the gift of exhortation is not just to give someone an encouraging word, but to call them to action, like encourage them and provoke them in such a way with your encouraging words that calls them to action. It's more of it's a part of that evocative process.
Well, and I think that one of the things that I think is significant about the relational approach is the vulnerability that you get to witness as you have a real relationship with people. So the disciples got to witness his prayer life. They got to see him struggle in the Garden of Gethsemane. They got to see him get frustrated with the Pharisees and flip over the tables. They saw him having to exercise and do things both in private and public. And they saw the consistency in his walk. They saw him walk it out.
Is that I think young people are craving to see leaders be vulnerable. They don't want to see their spotlight images. Mm-hmm. And, we've been in ministry long enough to we have seen that countless times where people are different on and off the stage. Mm-hmm. And they want to see someone that is vulnerable and real and authentic, not afraid to share their weaknesses, not afraid to share their real stories, not afraid to let them see them at home or with their makeup off.
Right.
And that's what Jesus did.
Yeah.
The disciples saw him tired. They saw him hungry. They saw him walking. They saw him carrying things. They saw him praying for people. And that is the number one thing they saw him doing.
Yeah.
Is praying and how he sought his Father to get direction for what to do.
Right. All the above. It was, they got to see the real Jesus. And I think that's a big part of true discipleship, is that the people that we're discipling get to see us in our real moments. And one of the things I've learned how to do is just to own my own weaknesses and teach people how I'm working through them versus trying to hide them and cover them up.
When I'm seeking someone to listen to, a book to read, a podcast to listen to, I don't want to hear someone that has book knowledge. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you're the greatest theologian on the planet. If you don't have a story, I'm not listening to you. And I feel like that's the younger generation. They want to hear what you have to say based on your human experience, not your book knowledge. They don't want theology. They don't even want knowledge.
Right.
They want something that's real, like an essence of someone's life. Like this, I learned this because I got, what you say a lot, I got pulled through a keyhole backwards.
Right. Yeah. Well, so in that note, true discipleship is transformational. Now, that's another word that we use a lot that we need to unpack a little bit and explain. Transformational means I am being changed. I don't just claim the benefits of grace without saying those things should be changing me to be more like him, less self-centered, less insubordinate, less, entitled, less, envious and jealous, and less, this person that gives myself freedom to do whatever because it makes me happy.
No, it is. It's the becoming process.
Yes.
And the greatest illustration on earth of a transformation is when a caterpillar goes into a cocoon and comes out a butterfly.
Yeah.
That's the becoming process. That's the transformation process.
Right.
We should look nothing like that we did before.
Yeah. And
so much like him.
At the end of the day, we measure the transformational process because of how it shows up in our most significant relationships. If we say we love God, as John writes in the 1 John, he says, if we say we love God and hate our brother, we're not getting love the right way.
Yeah, and
we're
I
not
think
doing
that
love
is,
the right way.
That is something that young people are not seeing in the church.
Right.
They're seeing all this duality.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing the people that preach on Sundays and then live a different life. They're they're hearing all these things about sexual indiscretion, from pastors and leaders, and that is not a transformed life.
Right. And so we've got to clean up our act on our end as leaders, and we can't be out here promoting ourselves as a pastor, a prophet, and all these things, and living in adultery, living in compromise, and all the other things that open the door to the enemy. And what I find is this is really critical, is that if we are not personally showing people how we are living this surrendered, transformed life, then we're probably pretending. Yes. And so a lot of pretense in the church. I would rather someone say to me, hey, this is my problem. This is my shortcoming. We see this in the Apostle Paul's life. He says, look, I had this weakness that I could not get out of. 3 times I asked God to set me free and deliver me instantly, and it didn't happen that way. It was a progressive coming back to Jesus, working it out and letting that grace go to work on the inside of me, and me admitting one more time I needed to go deeper and stronger at it, right?
No, transformation is not professional mask wearing.
Yes.
We have a wardrobe closet full of masks. We have our church mask we throw on, our sit in the school line mask, our grocery store mask, our, Friday night mask, whip out the wine kind of mask. And then that is not transformation. Transformation is from the inside out. It's not professional mask wearing. And the younger generation they can sniff it out. They have radar for fake.
Yes.
They understand people wearing a mask. And I believe they're demonstrating their rage of all this false pretense kind of way we're living inside the church by all these demonstrations that we're seeing publicly.
Well, right. And I think we need to sort of deconstruct modern discipleship. Okay? So modern discipleship is sit and listen and you go home, right? And
bench warming.
As you've heard it, or you watch it on your phone, you scroll, consume, and move on, right? And so what we've got to address is that if you say you're being discipled, you need to be able to tell me clearly who is leading you in that process. Because if I say I'm a digital disciple, that's not biblical. That's not true.
No.
There is no such a thing as as digital discipleship being a biblical process, because all you're really doing is liking, following, and subscribing without any personal commitment to change and accountability. No. One of the big ingredients in this whole thing is that we're missing the fruit of accountability. And accountability is not somebody coming into your life who tells you stop doing this and start doing that. It's not somebody coming to tell you what to do. It's somebody coming alongside you who's more mature, who's been following the Lord longer than you, who understands the growth process, and they speak into your life, giving you both two things. Not just one, not just all support. You're a rock star. You're amazing.
You're amazing.
You hung the moon. But also challenge. We need challenge. We need somebody to look at us. As a matter of fact, I think about the Moravians. I know it's a rabbit, but I got to chase it.
No.
Here we go. The Moravians had small groups in the woods. You know what they did? Is they looked at each other and they said, hey, you tell me where I'm coming up short, and I'll tell you where you're coming up short. What if we had that in the church? Nobody would show up.
So true discipleship is life on life.
Yes.
It's doing life together.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that's what the younger generation is craving.
Yes.
They're wanting to know that they matter. Like,
mm-hmm.
and you can't tell someone that they matter if you're not willing to spend time with them.
Right, right. And so I think we've got to get back to the biblical model of discipleship, which should be calling us up higher, causing us to go deeper, and helping us to form healthy relationships with the most significant people in our lives, and we should really know one another accordingly.
Before we move on, I have to point this out, what relationship is not. Relationship is not working together at church. As we have this volunteerism in the church where where you greet, you run the camera, you pass out the communion, and we think that that's not relational, that's transactional.
Mm-hmm.
And we get stuck in church environments where we're volunteering our lives away, but we still don't have relationship.
Mm-hmm. So true. And here's the thing, true discipleship, let's put it in some points for you to be able to chew on. It should cost you something, time, comfort, convenience, reputation even, right? It requires relationship, people who know you, people who challenge you, people who walk with you. It demands obedience, not just hearing, but doing. It produces change. We become more like Him, and then we know that we're walking in discipleship. So what would you say to someone who is searching for discipleship? Where do they go? What do they do?
I would say to not look for it on social media.
Right.
Don't go to your phones for discipleship.
Right.
Don't go to a podcast. Don't look up the latest, greatest prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Because relationships over phone is not true relationship.
Right.
You need to find a human being.
Right.
And so you have to go to church. Jesus said, don't forsake the gathering of the saints together.
Mm-hmm.
That, the local church is the best place to find a human being to relate with.
Mm-hmm.
And see if they have small groups.
Right.
Do they have a small group to get in?
Mm-hmm.
Because discipleship is also not sitting in a congregation. And again, it's not volunteering to pass out communion on Sundays.
Right.
So find a small group to get in, and make sure that small group is interactional. It's not a sit and listen model.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it starts with the hunger to become more like Jesus, and then it starts with a relationship, and you just begin meeting people and you spend time with people. You can ask them, and those of us who are seeking to disciple need to begin relationships with other people, not to just, disciple them, but to spend time with them and to find out if that need is there. It starts with that felt need of, I need more, and then a good, solid, mature leader who says, I want to walk alongside you. And
yes, a peer
and you
is
commit
not
to you commit to 3 months, 6 months
Yeah.
of spending time together once a week. You sit down over a cup of coffee and just discuss the scriptures and what God is showing you, and you begin walking this thing together. And this is the making of good, solid discipleship.
Yeah, I feel that true discipleship is an older person walking beside a younger person, and I believe that true discipleship can actually bring the older generation and the younger generation together if it's done properly.
I agree. So we're going to close with this, okay? So we have devoted our entire church to this whole process. The name of our podcast is Generation 19. That's the Joshua generation. And it's always the next generation that we have to pass the baton to. So I want to say this to you from my heart. I realize you don't need more podcasts. You don't need more content. You don't need more conferences and gatherings and all those things. You need discipleship, real discipleship, where we follow Jesus fully, where we set our lives apart, where we learn to walk in the power and take risks, to be courageous and brave like never before, right? And so the question is no longer, do I go to church, but am I becoming a disciple who follows Jesus, right?
Yeah, I'm a follower of Jesus.
Right, right. And so as we close out this podcast and as we consider this call to discipleship, we as a church have made it our main priority because we realize that without discipleship, then the church itself is weak. Okay? With true discipleship, we have a much stronger church. And I'm going to say this. Church growth should no longer be about how many people are attending our churches.
No, it's not about butts in the seats.
Yeah, it should be more about, are we growing and discipling people to become like Jesus, which will then empower us to actually advance the kingdom.
Yeah, so growth is not growing our brains with more knowledge. It's growing our souls, mind, will, and emotions. Because statistics say that the average person stops growing at age 25. Yeah. That's when they're done with college. That's when they're done with their education.
Yeah.
But there's so much more growth that takes place. We're growing our souls, our mind, our will, and our emotions, our spirits.
So we're doing stuff. We have a lock-in coming up April the 10th for young adults.
An old-fashioned lock-in.
Good old-fashioned
Stay up all night, eating pizza.
And doing stuff, right? And then we have a week-long intensive. We refer to it as the Forge. It's specifically for young adults who are seeking deeper walk with God. It's a discipleship intensive for a week-long and experience.
As we fully understand that we need to forge a brave new breed of believer like the world hasn't known since the early church and the disciples, if we're going to carry the church into the next millennia.
Generation 19, we'll see you here next time. God bless you. Thank you for watching.